Yeah.
How do we get you to work on this full time?
So far it's been a sort of a hobby project, but after the summer I'll be working full-time on Grafana and related things.
Torkel decided that it's time to give this a try, so he resigned from that place.
Torkel left and he was going to do like consulting.
I did some consulting and I did some talks on Grafana, and I got some open source sponsors as well. I think that really helped me push any plans of commercialization. I didn't really have any plan of like creating a company, I think.
That changed when I think you met Raj and Anthony.
This was really stumbling into it.
Oh yeah, so the first time I found out about Grafana, so I was working with Raj, so we had the startup idea, we knew we wanted to do something in the monitoring space, something SaaS-based.
Probably early 2014, and Anthony and I were looking at a bunch of different open source projects in the space, and we found Grafana. It was a relatively new project. I think version 1.0 had just been released.
We started using it first. We're like, hey, this is open source, we can use this as the basis of our product, and it was fantastic. Grafana just looked so beautiful.
I just thought it was crazy cool from the way it looked, the way it felt, the beauty of the interface, and we just reached out to Torkel pretty quickly.
It's the great thing about Raj, right? He's a great networker. So we reached out and invited him to New York for a week to, under the guise of come and consult with us for a week.
At the time, I think he was pretty excited that someone would pay him for consulting on Grafana for a week.
We didn't actually do any work that week. We just, kind of spent the whole week talking, getting to know each other. We got along so well. We all had such a great shared vision for Grafana.
After that week, Raj and Anthony felt like, oh, this Torkel guy might be good to have on board in this project, and not just use his open source project.
We pitched him on the idea of starting a company with us around Grafana, and that was how Grafana Labs started, or as it was called back then, how Raintank started. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Raj Dutt. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Raintank. We're a brand new company. We've only been in existence for about 5 months. Our mission at Raintank is to democratize metrics. And we think that our business model, which is open SaaS, can combine the best of both worlds of SaaS and open source.
I'd say for a while there was both a feeling of really positive elation almost that the open source project was beginning to get momentum and we were starting to see it snowball. But then for a while we were almost panicking because we couldn't really figure out how to monetize it and translate it into revenue.
My plan when I started working on Grafana full-time was to make a paid version of the open source product, like a pro version. But after we joined and we created Grafana Labs, we were able to build a SaaS product, like an online service basically that was using the open source project. So our kind of business plan or was really around like open SaaS.
There were people that were comfortable buying SaaS solutions and they had budget for that and they were used to that world. And there were people who really liked open source, and open SaaS was just this word at the time that tried to describe what we were doing as almost the best of both worlds.
This strategy really enabled me for the first couple of years to not think about commercialization at all, and so we put everything in open source and didn't need to make anything private, basically. We had some seed money and we were able to hire people.
I started as employee number 7. I was the second engineering hire. But only a few months later, Daniel Lee joined, Dan Sheck joined, Alex joined. We doubled in size in a few months.
I joined Grafana in 2014 to work on the UX and design side of the house.
I believe I'm employee 31.
I think it was about 50 or 60 people. So we were like super small team.
Basically go back very far with Torkel, so we grew up in the same neighborhood.
I'd known Raj and Anthony previously.
I had worked with Torkel previously, so we kind of knew each other.
I haven't met Torkel in that company, but he left that company, I think, 2 months before I joined to work on Grafana full time, and I worked there together with Daniel, Carl, and Marcus.
I didn't know anybody here before I joined. I implemented a hiring ban in Sweden. I said we can't hire any more Swedes. We're going to go remote first, and we want to have people from other countries.
There's a bunch of people in the community, and the funny thing is we've hired most of them, right? Which is really funny in a cosmic sense.
So then we sort of hired random people on the internet. Put out a job ad, and they weren't referrals, didn't know who they were. And Ivana was like one of those first people, and Andre as well.
I didn't know even that Grafana was a company, right? Like I know just the project, like open source project on GitHub.
Grafana took a chance on me, so I'm very grateful to be here. Daniel made me believe that being new to Grafana and like being junior developer is kind of my superpower because I have a very unique view. I, at the time, documented a lot of my struggles and how I overcame them. And at the time, I wrote so many blog posts. And interestingly, these blog posts are still very popular because I think those how-to resonate with people, and they always come to them at the beginning of their journey.
It's just super exciting, and we have so many sort of fun things that we hope to be able to do.
Some of the first Grafana cons, one of them was at the Squarespace office. There were so few people at the time who were customers of ours, but everyone in that room was sort of eager to help us as a business figure out how to take their money. And I just remember that was a really funny feeling, and it was sort of something that made me really appreciate the dynamic that existed between the company and the community, certainly in those early days.
The whole theme in Grafana 2.5 is going to be sort of around this sort of empowering you with more data source options.
So we started adding support for these other databases, but it was really cumbersome, right? Bespoke sort of integrations, hard to maintain.
I was really afraid of feature creep and trying to cater to every possible user.
I think what was the really big unlock for us was we released this plugin system. And the plugin system helped because anyone could develop a new database for Grafana without having to understand how the rest of Grafana worked. And we could update these databases without having to update Grafana as a whole. So we started with data source plugins, and then later had panel plugins.
Yeah, the plugin system was kind of interesting, given how impactful it's been in the history of Grafana. I think the pie chart was one of the primary reasons for us building that.
Pie charts are a pretty horrible way to visualize data, but I can't remember if it was the reason we created a plugin system.
I don't remember it. I don't know what happened. Yeah, that's Daniel.
Yeah, that was the reason for the plugin system in Grafana 4.6.
I don't even know this is true. I don't know if this is true. Tell me though. Tell me. I don't remember.
So one of the top voted issues for quite a while was having a pie chart panel. So Matt Tobak, who was our head of UX at the time, or our only UX designer at the time, it sounds like he had a team when he's a head of UX, was really against pie charts.
We even have a blog post. I think Matt Tobak talked about this.
He wrote the blog post.
Pie charts just being not a great representation PowerPoint charts. No, you don't have to do it this way. If you have something that's 12% and you have something that's 13%, presentations that people are doing because they think they have to, the way you represent data matters.
He's not wrong, but a lot of people like pie charts, so,
They're popular, right? And you can't argue with that. You've got to give the people what they want.
The point of the plugin system is obviously to extend Grafana, but it made the problem of not being forced to accept PRs that you didn't want really much easier, because then you could actually have a way for those contributors to say, okay, that you can actually rewrite this as a plugin and maintain it yourself. So yeah, that's the beauty of the plugin system, is that it kind of keeps the core of Grafana easy and maintainable.
I can validate that a big reason for the panel plugin was, shall we say, distaste for the pie chart.
I think that probably sounds right.
The big tent approach has really kind of defined a big part of what Grafana is. And it remains to us kind of amusing that in the observability space, no one else is big tent, right? It's almost strange, because when you look at, say, the BI space, you'd be laughed out of the room if you weren't big tent. So for us, it was always a question of why isn't everyone else kind of more neutral? And I think it's worked out well for us.
There's never a one size fits all. There's always this mix of different data sources, different vendors, because the different vendors might have different strengths and weaknesses. Most of that came from Raj, like wanting a different company that was more open and friendly to competitors. We want to have a good relationship with them, and we want the experience for our users that happen to be using them to be good.
10 years ago, you'd sell this kind of software by taking the CIO out to steak dinner and playing a round of golf. The developers would learn months later that a multi-million-dollar deal had just been done with company X, and like it, we don't care. It's what you're going to use, right? And that isn't really the way that software is bought anymore. 80+% of our overall engineering time it goes to open source, and a lot of times we start projects as open source and then figure out how to layer on differentiation as we go. And we build software for the practitioner. We don't build software for the buyer. I think it more easily allows us to stay true to that mentality and not lose that North Star.